Crikey! Have you ever looked up at that glittering cluster in the night sky and wondered why we Aussies and folk across the globe call it the Seven Sisters when most of us can only make out six? Today, in the next few minutes, you're going to hear a yarn that blends ancient myths, modern science, and a mysterious missing star. It's a tale that connects Greece to the outback and might just be humanity's oldest story. And if you're keen to unravel it, give this vid a thumbs up, tap that subscribe button and share it with a mate. You don't want to miss the big reveal at the end. The Pleiades, known down under as the Seven Sisters, is more than just a pretty smudge in the sky. Astronomers tell us this open star cluster was born roughly 100 million years ago and could be as young as 75 million. It's a gathering of hot blue stars, still wrapped in the gas and dust of their birth, and scientists reckon the cluster will last only a few 100 million years before its members drift apart. For observers on Earth, it's one of the nearest and easiest clusters to find. Draw a line from Orion's belt, past the orange giant Aldebaran in Taurus, and you'll spot a tiny dipper of stars clustered together. Most people see 6 points of light on a good night, but with dark skies and some patience, you can count a dozen or more. Yet across cultures and languages, the group is called the Seven Sisters. The earliest recorded mention may come from Chinese astronomy around 2357 BCE, where the stars were used to mark the beginning and end of planting seasons. In northern Australia, Yolngu people still time their seasons by the heliacal rising of this cluster. In Europe, the ancient Greeks gave each star a name and wove them into a myth about Atlas, Pleione, and their daughters. Remarkably, many Aboriginal groups have a similar story of a group of young women chased across the sky by a man or a group of men. Why did unconnected cultures see the same thing? And why insist there are seven when our eyes say otherwise? That's the mystery we're about to explore. In the Greek tale recorded by poets and philosophers, the Seven Sisters were the daughters of the Titan Atlas and the sea nymph Pleione. When the proud hunter Orion set eyes on these shimmering maidens, he was smitten and refused to leave them alone. The story goes that he chased them relentlessly across land and sea, striding through the waves with his great stride, intent on claiming them for himself. Fearing for their safety, Zeus transformed the sisters into doves that flew up to the heavens, where they took refuge as stars. The hunter Orion was immortalized as a neighboring constellation, forever chasing their heels across the sky. Each star had a name: Maia, Electra, Taygeta, Alcyone, Seleno, Sterope, and Merope. Ancient astronomers even named their parents, Atlas and Pleione, as two extra stars in the cluster. The Greek myth doesn't just explain their presence in the sky, it carries moral lessons about hubris and unrequited pursuit. In some versions, Zeus placed the sisters among the stars to comfort their father Atlas, punished to hold up the heavens. In others, Merope falls in love with a mortal, Sisyphus, and hides her face in shame, which is why she appears fainter. For sailors and farmers, the Pleiades signaled the start and end of the navigation season. The ancient Greek word Pleiades may even derive from the verb to sail. The cluster rose before dawn in early May, telling Mediterranean mariners to put to sea and return home before the stormy winter. At night, festivals like Samhain, the midnight culmination of the Pleiades, marked the boundary between the world of the living and the dead. For a modern analogy, picture a footy coach reading the weather off his iPhone. The Pleiades were the original notifications. This Greek yarn is rich with romance, danger, and cosmic signposts. Yet what's striking is how familiar it sounds to stories told thousands of kilometers away by peoples who never met. As we shift our gaze south to the Dreamtime, you'll notice uncanny similarities and a few surprising twists. Far to the south, Aboriginal peoples have watched the same cluster for tens of thousands of years and woven it into songlines that map both land and sky. Among the Wirangu of South Australia, The sisters are called Yugarilya or Kungkarankalpa. In one Dreamtime story, recorded by elders like Susie Betts, 7 young women travel across the desert gathering bush foods and dancing. A powerful man named Wati Nyiru, embodied in the constellation we call Orion, becomes infatuated and pursues them relentlessly. As the women flee, they shape sweeping dunes, weathered hills, and shimmering salt lakes with their footprints. Sometimes they hide, other times they climb trees or transform into emus and dingoes. When Nyiru gets too close, they leap into the sky and become stars. The moral is clear. Unwanted attention is dangerous, and the sisters teach proper behavior for men and women. Another tale from the central desert tells how a group of sisters lit a fire that burned so brightly it leapt into the heavens and became the glowing cluster. Pijanjajara and Yankunijajara communities still enact ceremonies where girls rub ice on their bodies to symbolize the frost and maturity that accompany the rising of the Pleiades. Elders speak of the sisters singing as they travel, their voices calling out to each other and bringing honey and water to those who listen. The story is not just a myth, but a mnemonic. When the sisters appear in the pre-dawn sky each winter, Yolngu fishers know it is time to harvest water chestnuts and lotus roots. When they sink into the western horizon, the hot, dry season is near. It isn't only about agriculture. For many mobs, the cluster is a totem linked to identity and kinship. Elders teach young ones to find their camp and their responsibilities by learning the stories of the stars. One anthropologist describes an Arrernte woman who, upon seeing the cluster at dusk, burst into a ceremonial song about her aunties in the sky and the man who tried to steal them. Her grandchildren giggled, then went quiet, listening to a living chain of knowledge stretching back beyond memory. That's the power of this story. It encodes lore, land, and love in a single shimmering symbol that returns every year. And just like the Greek tale, there's always a persistent pursuer, which brings us to why both stories might share an ancient root. Let's lay the Greek and Aboriginal stories side by side. Both speak of a group of young women chased by a male hunter. In Greece, the hunter is Orion. In the Dreamtime, he may be Wati Nyiru, or a group of brothers. In each version, the sisters flee to the sky and become the sparkling cluster. Both tales warn against arrogance or unwanted advances. They even explain why only 6 stars are usually visible. Merope hides her light after marrying a mortal, while in some Aboriginal versions, a sister is stolen or hiding. And in both myths, the pursuit continues night after night. Orion still rises after the sisters, and the chase plays out above our heads. What makes these parallels startling is that there was almost no contact between ancient Greece and pre-colonial Australia. Yet the patterns converge. Some scholars suggest that a motif of a hunter chasing sisters could be a memory carried from before humans dispersed out of Africa over 70,000 years ago. Imagine a campfire yarn told on an African savanna that spread with migrating families and evolved independently into different myths. It's speculative, but the sheer number of cultures calling the cluster 7 sisters hints at something deep. There's another possibility. Perhaps the sky itself invites similar stories. A tight bunch of stars beside a line of 3 bright ones naturally looks like a group being followed. Like families finding the same shapes in clouds, human brains are wired to turn patterns into narratives. Whether by ancient memory or convergent imagination, the coincidence begs us to look closer at the stars themselves. Up next, we'll meet the mysterious 7th star and see how physics might explain why so many cultures count 7 when most of us see only 6. So why do so many cultures insist on 7 when most of us only see 6? Part of the answer lies in the stars themselves. The Pleiades cluster contains more than 1,000 suns, but only a handful are bright enough to stand out. Under average conditions, most people count 6. Yet in dark skies you can see more. For ancient peoples without light pollution, 7 may have been the norm. Astronomers using Gaia data found that Atlas and Pleione, the 2 stars representing the sisters' parents, used to be further apart tens of thousands of years ago. Pleione is also a shell star that brightens and dims as gas escapes. When it shone brightly or sat farther from Atlas, observers would have clearly seen a 7th star. When it dimmed or moved closer, the pair merged and only 6 stood out. If you picture 2 campfires merging into one, you get the idea. This simple orbital dance dovetails with myths about a lost or hidden sister. Many Greek stories explain that Merope hides her face in shame after marrying a mortal, while Aboriginal tales say one sister was abducted or is hiding. Cultures as diverse as the Iroquois and Islamic scholars also mention a 7th star that disappeared. The science suggests our ancestors really did see a 7th spark at times, and they wove that observation into legend. It reminds us that the night sky changes and that human stories change with it. Astronomers also note that the cluster itself is transient. It will gradually lose its members over a few 100 million years as stars burn out or drift away. Knowing that the 7 sisters are temporary makes their myths even more poignant. Now that we've heard the myths and the physics, let's step back and consider how to interpret such coincidences with care. Before we get carried away, it's worth doing what scientists and storytellers alike must do: separate intriguing patterns from evidence. While it's tempting to declare the 7 sisters story the oldest narrative on Earth, academics urge caution. Motifs, simple narrative elements like a hunter chasing sisters or a lost star, can persist across cultures because they are easy to remember. Complete myths, with named characters and detailed plots, tend to change quickly or disappear. That's why flood myths and dragon slayers pop up everywhere. They speak to universal fears, not necessarily a single origin. In 2021, biologists Michael and Katie Nice speculated that the Greek and Aboriginal stories share a common ancestor more than 100,000 years old. Their claims were widely shared, but critics noted that their astronomical data were outdated and that they conflated motifs with full stories. Astronomers argue that while the similarities are fascinating, they don't amount to proof. Indigenous scholars also warn against mining sacred stories for scientific validation. These narratives serve purposes within their own cultures, teaching law and ethics as much as explaining the cosmos. Different peoples might independently craft similar tales, because the night sky is the same for all of us, and our brains are wired to seek meaning in patterns. The time of year when the Pleiades rise and set coincides with important seasonal changes worldwide, so it makes sense to anchor rituals and morals to the cluster. It's a bit like how children in different countries invent similar games without ever meeting. The tools are universal and the ideas emerge naturally. So when someone claims that the 7 Sisters myth proves humans carried stories out of Africa 100,000 years ago, take it with a grain of salt. The evidence is tantalizing but far from conclusive. At the same time, don't dismiss the wonder. The fact that similar motifs arise on opposite sides of the planet is a testament to our shared humanity. Whether by ancient memory, convergent imagination, or coincidence, these stories remind us that people everywhere looked up at the same small cluster and felt compelled to tell a story. In the conclusion, we'll pull these threads together and reflect on what the 7 Sisters mean for us today. As we bring this cosmic yarn back to Earth, take a moment to imagine the generations of people who have craned their necks at these glittering points. Greek sailors steering by the cluster, Yolngu fishers timing their harvest, Wirangu elders singing of Ugarilya, and astronomers plotting proper motions all share a thread of curiosity. Our tour has shown how similar motifs travel across continents and how simple changes in a star's brightness can inspire legends. We've seen that the cluster is a youngster in cosmic terms, born less than 150 million years ago and destined to drift apart. Yet its influence on human culture is ancient, even if we can't prove that a single story of the Seven Sisters predates our migration out of Africa. The overlaps are striking. They tell us that people everywhere look up, see patterns and craft meaning. That shared impulse is older than any myth. It reminds us that storytelling isn't about who wrote it first, but about connecting generations, teaching values, and making sense of the unknown. A story about sisters being chased can be both a warning to young men, a calendar for planting, and a cosmic mystery all at once. So next time you're out on a crisp night, maybe at the beach, maybe deep in the bush, find Orion's belt. Follow the line past Aldebaran and look for that tiny cluster of blue-white sparks. Think of the Greek girls fleeing a giant, the Aboriginal women turning into stars, the seventh point flickering in and out. Remember that the sky you're seeing is dynamic, that the stars are moving and changing, and that our stories move with them. That sense of wonder is something we all share, and it's worth holding on to. If this journey across myth, science, and the night sky lit a spark in you, give this video a like and smash that subscribe button. It helps more people see these stories. Share the tale with a mate who loves a good yarn and drop a comment below telling us how many stars you can see in the Pleiades from your backyard. Have you heard a different version of the Seven Sisters? We'd love to hear it. Don't forget to tap the bell so you never miss our next cosmic yarn. There are plenty more waiting to be told. Thanks for sticking around right to the end, legend. Catch you next time, and keep looking up.